Hi, my name's John, welcome to Ride. We're here for another of our roadcyclinguk.com edits on maintenance. Today we're going to cover cable replacement, gear cables, and the technique that's used to replace those. So most modern bicycles have an aerodynamic cable system on the handlebars, whereby the cables are covered by the handlebar tape. So the first thing we're going to need to do is remove the handlebar tape to gain access to the cables. Simply done. You can either unwrap it if you're hoping to reuse the bar tape. More often than not, this is an ideal opportunity to replace the bar tape. If that's the case, it's possible just to cut the bar tape off. We'll see if this will come off without cutting it. If it's an adhesive tape, it probably will tear on the way off, but we'll give it a go. So with the bar tape off and the cables exposed, what I like to do next is just shift the derailleurs down to the smaller sprockets, take all the tension off of the system. Next up, we're just going to cut this tape. There's some PVC tape normally under the handlebars, just used to secure the cables against the bar. Just slice through that carefully with a sharp blade. Peel that off. You've then got access to the cables. So it's worth noting here you've got gear and brake. We're obviously today working on the gear cable system, so we can ignore the front brake cable for now. They use a different housing. This is the one we're interested in. It feeds in through here. So the first thing, or the next thing we want to do rather, is gain access to the outer that we're going to replace. So we'll just cut the end cable, or the end cap off the cable. Here at the derailleur. Release the derailleur pinch bolt. We're using a 105 system, and as an example here from Shimano. Other systems are on the market. They work principally on the same way. The biggest difference will be the way in which the cable is secured into the shifter. So straight away you can see the cable coming off pretty easily. We can strip the outer now off of the inner. Just get rid of that. Then get rid of some of the inner cable just so you're not working with so much. And then as you feed the cable out of the shifter, just take note of where it's coming out on. There's a lot of different little holes and spaces on the shifter. Try and just pay attention to where that's coming out of. It's going to make life a lot easier when you get to feed the new cable in. Even leave that one in situation for a minute until you get the new cable ready. So we're going to grab a new cable. A nice shiny new one. And this will mean there's no mistakes when you go to feed it back in. This can sometimes be a little bit tricky. Hopefully this one will label. Okay, so the new one in place. Pull it right through. There's a little piece on the end here which will anchor in the shifter. It's kind of crucial that you make sure that that is seated all the way home. If it catches or it doesn't seat all the way home in its housing, you're going to find that the shifter will bind. That can cause you problems. So just cycle the shifter whilst tugging on the cable just to make sure that it does what it's expected to do. That one's working fine. So when it comes to the outer, how do you know how much outer to use? Well, two ways you can do it. You can either measure the piece you just took off, presuming that that is the right length to start with. If you're dubious, or if there was no outers there in the first place, this is how you work out how much length you need. Grab yourself some outer housing. Try and use a good quality one. If you're using a Shimano system as we are, use a Shimano cable. If it's a SRAM system, try and use their cables, Campag, so on and so forth. Just offer up the cable housing. You've got two routes coming out of the shifter on this particular model. That's designed basically depending on which handlebar model you're using, so you can get a good route into the handlebar. It doesn't really matter where you use it. where you put the cable will have an effect on the shape of the handlebar that you grip when you tape over the top of it as well. So we're looking for a nice smooth cable route. This one, when it came out, same as this side, I think ran over the back. No, ran over the front. So it ran right over the front alongside the front brake cable. So we can feed it in to there. Feed it into there. And just hold it by hand. Nice and tight into the handlebar. And then we're looking to try and keep nice smooth curves. We don't want any sharp curves or sudden changes in direction on the cable. Everything's got to work on as little friction as possible. So we're looking to keep everything smooth, nice gentle curves. You want to make sure that your length of the cable doesn't impede the handlebar movement. So you need to still be able to turn the handlebars a full cycle, so check that. This one looks okay. So we're looking at about that much. So we take a good quality set of cutters. Make the cut. And then you just need to make sure that the end of the cable is open. So you can just square it off, or round it off I should say. Even take a little bradawl, something with a point on it, just open up the end of the cable there. Again, trying to just make sure that we've got as little friction in the system as possible. So nice open cable. Then you need to seal off the ends, cable ferrules. So this is your cable ferrule. These are sealed at the ends, or sealed on the inside, so they help keep some of the mud and or the water ingress out of the inner cable. Keeps your cables good for longer. It's also a nice way to finish off the end of the cable. Without them, you've just got a blunt cut on the end. You can see the innards of the cable itself. Pop a cap on there and it's a much neater finished product. Now some systems will use a ferrule going into the shifter. Others won't necessarily. This one will, so we put a ferrule on both ends. These are particularly nice. They're kind of sealed ferrules, so they do a good job of keeping the mud and the muck out, or the water out. The cable outer itself is pre-greased. A lot of the cheaper systems out there won't do that. So try and use as good as best quality stuff as you can find. And just have a look up here. This cable is going to run neatest through the inside of the brake, like so. If we run it on the outside, again it puts another curve into the system. Again, the more curves you have, the more friction you've got. So run it on the inside. Just feed that through the first cable stop there. Now this is a barrel adjuster on the frame, which helps us adjust cable tension, much as the one on the rear derailleur does. What you want to make sure is that it's not wound too far out to start with, otherwise you've got nowhere to go. So hopefully wind this in, so that we've got some adjustment down the line when we need to. Okay, good. So that's through. So next up I'm just going to secure that with some fresh tape. Do this as neat as you can. It's obviously not going to be on show by the time we've taped over the top, but it's nice to keep things tidy. So put it nice and snug. Again, check it's not pulled the housing out of the shifter at any point. A couple of turns, snap it off. Depending on the shape of the handlebars, will depend on how much of this you need. You don't necessarily need to tape all the way up and down the bar like you do sometimes see. A couple of turns just to keep things in place. And that's good. So again, just check this is in situ. Check our curves, nice and smooth. Straight down to the bottom bracket. There's a cable guide under here. Again, just make sure that slides through the right place. Along to the back section. So we need to replace this piece as well. So we'll take another piece of our outer. Now that looked a pretty good length. So we can pretty much just measure that up with the new piece. Chop that. Again, just open up the ends. Make sure we've got nice open ends. Nice fresh ferrules on the end of there. Again, barrel adjuster, this one's wound out a little way, so we'll give that a few turns back in. Don't turn it all the way to the stop. If you do, just turn it back out another couple of turns. You've got space to go in either direction then. Put the cable in there. To the stop. That. Yeah, so there we go. We can again just check the function. I like to just keep a hold of the cable, just cycle through the shifter a couple of times. You'll be able to feel the cable moving in your hand at this end. Make sure it feels like everything's doing what it should. Take your 5mm and pinch it up. So that's your cable replacement done. You'll notice we've replaced inner and outer together. It's best practice to do that. You'll tend to find that if the inner cable is corroded or is not top, on top form, the outer cable will be in the same situation. So if you only replace one or the other, and normally it's the inner that gets replaced on its own, you're probably only doing 50 or 75% of the job. So it's always wise to try and, if you can, replace the inner and the outer at the same time. Much better end result. The last thing to do before you go ahead and adjust the derailleurs is to what's often called pre-stretch the cables. Now it's unlikely that you're actually going to stretch an inner steel cable. Most of them are pre-stretched at the factory anyway. What it does do is it actually helps make sure that all the ferrules are seated on the ends of the outer cables. The outer cables are seated in the shifter and in the derailleur. How we do it is shift the derailleurs up as high as they'll go, hold on to the lever and physically apply some pressure to the cable. Don't go crazy, but just a little bit of weight behind it, and it just helps make sure everything's seated, like I say. Once that's done, you can go ahead and start to adjust the gears. It'll cut down on the bedding in time, if any, and it'll make the whole thing go smoother. So when you've finished replacing your cables and you've checked the function of your gears, just time to trim off the end and put a cap on there to stop the fraying. So chop that off nice and clean. Nice little end cap. Couple of crimps on there, and that's the end, cleaned up and finished. So you can check our other edits for derailleur adjustment, and that'll tell you how to set the gears up from here.